Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Can the world produce enough food to sustain our growing population? Even today, it's said, there are 1 billion people who are starving. What will happen when the world's population increases from around 7 billion to 9 billion people? Are there solutions available, or are we faced with a future where hundreds of millions will die of hunger, where mass migration will be the only escape, where food riots will become commonplace? I'm delighted to be joined, first of all, here now from Philadelphia by the one and only Carl Lewis, who won 9 Olympic gold medals, of course, for the United States, and who is now the Goodwill Ambassador for the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. Carl, welcome. Welcome to the program. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Now, let me start by, I was saying there that you'd taken on this job with the UN on the food front. There must have been millions of people and hundreds of organizations who would like to have you as their ambassador. You were very much in demand by them all. What was it that made you say yes to this project rather than any other?
Well, I think it's very important that I've seen the world. You know, I've traveled, I've been to all different cultures and communities, and I've understood the problem. You know, a lot of people call me a nerd because I love news and I love information. And I understand the problem that we have with so many people that are hungry in our world, but not just in the undeveloped countries, but also the developed countries. So I thought this was an issue that we're all going to have to deal with sooner or later.
Are you more optimistic today, or the more you learn, are you more pessimistic?
Well, I would say I'm definitely more aware, and I wouldn't say pessimistic, but frustrated. Because even people that are hungry in poorer countries, that affects people in wealthy countries. We have to understand that everyone that's hungry affects us all, and that's the frustration.
I see, yes. And of course, you're a great supporter of the 1 billion project and so on. That really is a startling way of dramatizing the problem, isn't it? The 1 billion plan, the 1 billion campaign.
Yeah. Exactly, and I have my whistle to continue to blow about it. But it is so important to understand that we have so many people that are hungry in this world. And if we put a number to it, 1 billion, then all of a sudden people start to say, wow, I didn't realize it's that percentage of our world. And it's growing. And it's growing because of so many issues outside of just poverty, but it's also the economies in different areas. And it's also the environment. And these are issues that are affecting people. And right now, it's snowing in New Jersey, where I'm from. And when I grew up, the weather wasn't like this. So I don't know if it's just a difference, but we have to deal with all of these changes. And right now, we probably have almost double the amount of people that we had when I just grew up in the 70s.
And when you raise the whistle, blow the whistle to make people concentrate, what's the one most important fact or one most important point that you can make to them?
Just because, well, the biggest thing is that just because it isn't you and it isn't in your household doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. Because eventually, if we have hunger, then people, like you mentioned early in the opening, you're going to have people migrating to different places. It is also a security risk issue, because people are going to go where food and water is. So all of a sudden, that may affect you. If it doesn't hurt you now, they may be in your backyard later.
Thank you very much. At that point, we're going to bring in 3 colleagues, 3 experts here in the studio to continue the conversation. Gordon Conway, the former chief scientist for the British government's International Development Department, who's done an enormous amount of research into this issue. Next to him is Duncan Green from Oxfam, and also with me is Matt Ridley, an author who, it's fair to say, is a bit of a food crisis skeptic. So we want to hear from all of them, and Carl will be listening as well. Let me start, if I may, with you, Gordon. I mean, the picture you heard there from Carl, you reflect the same concerns, I guess. I mean,
yes, I do.
What is the most urgent?
Well, there are 3 things that are going on. One is these food price spikes. We're now in the middle of a second food price spike. Food prices have gone up enormously. That's an inconvenience in the West, but it's devastating for developing countries. So that's one. The second is that we've got this nearly billion people who are chronically hungry, more chronically hungry people in the world than we've ever had. And the third is that we've got to increase food production by 70%, 100% by 2050 if we're going to feed the world. Those are three big challenges for us.
Does it look the same way to you as well, Duncan?
Yes, Oxfam's seeing a lot of bad changes in these directions in our programmes around the world. We're seeing increasingly erratic climate making life very difficult for farmers. We're seeing the impact of these food price spikes, and we're actually devoting the next 4 years of our public campaigning to trying to deal with some of these issues and raise them with policymakers.
Now, Matt, you don't agree with the gloomy projections at this time. You think there's grounds for optimism more than gloom.
I do. I think that clearly we have enormous challenges, and Gordon's right, we've got to increase food production in order to keep up with the growing population. But if you look at what we've achieved over the last 50 years, we've trebled the yields of cereal agriculture without taking any extra land into production. We've largely prevented the enormous famines that were killing hundreds of millions, well, tens of millions of people in China and India in the 50s and 60s. And we've done so by applying fertilizer and new technologies to farming and also infrastructure. And yes, we're having price spikes at the moment, but from historically unprecedentedly low levels of food prices. Now, it'd be nice if we didn't have the price spikes, and one of the causes of that is because we've been taking food out of agriculture and putting it into motor fuel, and that has helped boost the price of food, which is a mistake in my view.
Now, was that too rosy a picture there, Gordon? A bit?
Yes, I think it is too rosy. I mean, I agree, we've got the technologies that can allow us to increase food production enormously. But we have to remember that if you look at, for example, at Africa, it's not just about having the technologies, it's about producing new seed, getting seed into the hands of farmers. It's also about the farmers being able to market their products, so getting them to market. All of that requires infrastructure. It's interesting, at the last food price spike in Africa, food production actually went down, even though in theory they could get more money. The reason why they aren't growing more food is all the barriers.
Could you just explain a food spike or any sort of spike, because it may not be lingo all around the world?
Well, basically, in 2006, the FAO said the price of food was like that. And it started rising in 2007 and went right up to a peak in 2008. I mean, it was about 50% or more before what it was. Then it came down again, and everybody said, oh, that's all right. But in 2009, it started to increase again, and in 2010, it shot right up. And we're now as high as we were in 2008. So the price is doing this all the time. And I'm not sure it's just going to stop. I think we're going to get more of that.
If I can jump in there,
yeah.
And we can see that even more in America. We're already talking about a food spike even more for 2011. So that's going to happen. And of course, we're using corn, like you mentioned earlier, for fuel. But where is our future for our environment? So we have to think of all these issues when it comes to food prices and also feeding people.
Do you see a growing awareness of this problem, or still very insufficient awareness of this problem in America?
Yeah, well, the reality is that the food spikes and prices are happening here. As you know, there's a big push for ethanol. So the corn prices have spiked, and that takes everything up in terms of food. I've just heard recently where people are saying the huge prices in milk and meat, it's going up, and they're predicting almost doubling in 2011. So even those who are not starving, it's affecting their home budgets. And at the same time, oil prices are going up here. So we feel that as well, even though we're in a developed country.
Thank you very much. Matt, the question of food prices going high and so on, from what you touched on just now, doesn't worry you as much as it worries some, because there's a past precedent that was worse than today, is it?
Yes, we've had food price spikes before, and what they tend to do is they tend to produce more plantings. I mean, people go out and increase their acreage. This is happening in Europe this winter. People are looking at the wheat price and saying, I'm going to plant more, etc. And that tends to bring the price down. And the price